You want to check out Roland Unfiltered? youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. Hey folks, Roland Martin here, broadcasting live from Atlanta, where tomorrow I'll be having my School Choice is the Black Choice Town Hall on the campus of Morehouse College. Now, coming up on today's Roland Martin Unfiltered for Thursday, February 21st, 2019, drama in Chicago. Jussie Smollett, the actor starring on Empire, is out on a $100,000 bond. He was arrested this morning on felony charges of filing a false police report on the attack he says he suffered at the hands of two masked men who yelled racial and homophobic slurs. It was a stunning news conference led by the Chicago superintendent, as well as the prosecutors will actually have those details for you. You'll hear from the superintendent who chastised Jussie Smollett in a major way. Also, a story not getting lots of attention because of Jussie Smollett, and that is a racist, white supremacist Coast Guard officer. He's being held for 14 days while federal prosecutors weigh terrorism charges against him. Christopher Hassan is an avowed white supremacist who, according to the feds, had compiled a list of liberal figures to kill, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, as well as a variety of journalists. We'll have the details for you. Folks, we've been talking about the North Carolina 9th Congressional District, all the voting irregularities and the voter fraud going on. Well, today, an election board ordered a new election in this district, and we will talk with the head of the the Democratic Party there in North Carolina. And of course, the biggest charges is that it was a Republican who was involved in voter fraud. Oh, we can't wait to have that conversation. Now, one of the richest black counties in America has a police department that discriminates against black and brown cops and citizens. That's according to a lawsuit filed by African American and Hispanic officers in Prince George's County. They're here to talk about it. Also, cops seize millions of dollars every year in cash and property from folks merely suspected of a crime. The Supreme Court this week may have ended that, or at least curtailed that practice. We will break it down right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. All right, folks, it is time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment, just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
There's nothing here. All right, folks, our top story, the arrest of Jussie Smollett, the actor who stars on the Fox show Empire. This is not the photo he wanted the world to see. It is the mugshot of Jussie Smollett, who this morning turned himself in to Chicago police. It took place at 5 a.m. Chicago time. He was arrested on a felony charge of disorderly conduct, alleging he made a false police report as a result of him saying that he was attacked by two men yelling racist and homophobic slurs and shouting MAGA. The police say they have all the receipts in the form of a $3,500 check. They say Smollett wrote to the two Nigerian men who staged the attack on him. And you remember, it took place on January 29th, around 2 a.m., when Smollett said he was attacked by two men wearing masks who yelled racial and homophobic slurs and said he was in MAGA country. Chicago police began to investigate, looking at videos and a variety of things. And as the days progressed, his story began to unravel. Chicago police say the whole thing was made up, a made-up publicity stunt in order to garner him attention and a raise on the show. Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson was clearly angry at a news conference this morning in the Windy City.
Good morning, everyone. Before I get started on why we're here, as I look out into the crowd, I just wish that the families of gun violence in this city got this much attention, because that's who really deserves the amount of attention that we're giving to this particular incident. So this morning, I come to you not only as the superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, but also as a black man who spent his entire life living in the city of Chicago. I know the racial divide that exists here. I know how hard it's been for our city and our nation to come together. And I also know the disparities, and I know the history. This announcement today recognizes that Empire actor Jussie Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career. I'm left hanging my head and asking why. Why would anyone, especially an African-American man, use the symbolism of a noose to make false accusations? How could someone look at the hatred and suffering associated with that symbol and see an opportunity to manipulate that symbol to further his own public profile? How can an individual who's been embraced by the city of Chicago turn around and slap everyone in this city in the face by making these false claims? Bogus police reports cause real harm. They do harm to every legitimate victim who's in need of support by police and investigators, as well as the citizens of this city. Chicago hosts one of the largest pride parades in the world, and we're proud of that as a police department and also as a city. We do not, nor will we ever tolerate hate in our city, whether that hate is based on an individual's sexual orientation, race, or anything else. So I'm offended by what's happened, and I'm also angry. I love the city of Chicago and the Chicago Police Department, warts and all. But this publicity stunt was a scar that Chicago didn't earn and certainly didn't deserve.
Now, folks, Jussie Smollett had his bail hearing this afternoon. His bail was set at $100,000. The judge in this case, Judge John Fitzgerald Light Jr., who's African-American, scolded Smollett. This is what he said, quote, "The most vile and despicable part of it, if it's true, is the noose. That symbol conjures up such evil in this country's history." Fox, which carries Empire, says they are monitoring the situation. Smollett's attorney put out this statement, quote, "Like any other citizen, Mr. Smollett enjoys the presumption of innocence, particularly when there has been an investigation like this one where information, both true and false, has been repeatedly leaked. Given these circumstances, we intend to conduct a thorough investigation and to mount an aggressive defense. If convicted, Smollett faces up to 3 years in prison, in state prison, and could be ordered to pay the cost of the investigation, which involved more than 20 Chicago police detectives over the past 3 weeks. Joining me right now is Cleo Monago. Of course, Cleo is a behavioral specialist, and we have several others who will be here. But let me first go to Cleo. Cleo, lots of conversation here because Jussie Smollett, African-American, who is also same-gender loving. He said this was a racist and homophobic attack. You have folks on the right who are Trump supporters. In fact, I'm going to read a tweet from Trump. But folks on the right who said this was a hoax from the beginning. There are folks who are supporters of Smollett who are angry that he did this. Again, he has not been convicted. But you look at what has been presented, they say he was the mastermind behind this. just your initial thoughts on this strange story.
Well, first of all, it's stunning. And Eddie Johnson, the superintendent's narrative was powerful. I've rarely seen a black superintendent of police speak like that, identify as a black man before indicting another black man for such a heinous accusation. And this is dangerous if indeed it's true. The reason I say if indeed it's true, because I haven't heard from Smollett yet, and I don't particularly fully trust the Chicago Police Department. I think we all know why. Laquan McDonald hiding cam recorders. I mean, the whole thing. But one thing I want to give us something to consider is that this is a high-profile anomaly. If indeed it's true, it's not the black community. It's a high-profile anomaly. It's very rare, if ever, that a black person creates something like this. And because it's so high profile, there's a lot of people are demoralized. There's people like Ann Coulter saying stuff like, well, the reason he tried to do a hoax is because racism is a hoax in America. And that's a very predictable impulse among those people who are opportunizing off of this whole alleged hoax. But it's caused a lot of conflict. For example, there were people saying that heterosexual men were being homophobic if they didn't support Smollett's perspective. But what never came out with that narrative was that a lot of same-gender loving people didn't believe and don't believe Smollett as well. So it's been a very conflicting, a very dangerous situation in terms of what the outcome could be. For example, now that like Mr. Johnson said, when somebody black reports a hate crime, people might second guess it now and treat them like Chicken Little. You know,
but here's
the sky is falling.
Well, I want to bring in Dr. Greg Carr, Chair of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. But, Greg, here's what's interesting about that. Charles Stewart, 1989, Boston, says black man killed his wife. We now know Charles Stewart was behind it. South Carolina, Susan Smith, somebody black killed her children. We now know that she drowned her kids in her car. That was a story that we covered on this show. It was either in, I can't remember if it was in South Carolina or Georgia, where a white woman, police officer, said that a black man shot her in her home. Well, in fact, the investigation was that she actually shot herself. Now, when those things happened, I don't recall anybody saying, "Ooh, the next time somebody white says something, we're not going to be able to trust this story." I believe, Greg, this goes back to in America where you're a credit to your race. That when something happens to one black person, something happens to one gay person, or something happens to one Muslim, everybody black and everybody who's gay and everybody who's Muslim have to apologize and not be afraid. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, this is the spectacle culture we live in. Ann Coulter and Jussie Smollett live in a spectacle culture. How do you pierce through the noise to get your message across? And at the end of the day, whiteness is invulnerable. It will always be viewed, because of its invulnerability, as the behavior of human beings, individual human beings. And as you said, when you start talking about non-whiteness, and at the end of that spectrum, of course, is blackness, each one of us represents the entire group. And when you then complicate it further with issues of gender or class, you're talking about another platform where all of that is amplified and one person represents the group. I agree with Dr. Minago. I agree with Cleo. When we heard the superintendent say that, he wished that people would come for homicide or gun violence the way they're showing up for this. They're showing up for this because it is a spectacle culture. And whether or not Brother Smollett did it or not, made this false accusation or not, is almost secondary. Because what we really are seeing is it's another test of the general population, and once again, we have failed because everybody out there had an opinion that they were spewing through a microphone without knowing anything about the facts. So it really is just another test of whether or not we can do anything other than do what we've done.
So 7 hours ago, Donald Trump sent out a tweet. But what's interesting, first of all, Donald Trump tweets all the time. But here's what's different here, Cleo. I can't remember the last time where Donald Trump tagged the very person he was talking about. In this tweet, it's Period at Jussie Smollett. What about MAGA and the tens of millions of people you insulted with your racist and dangerous comments, hashtag MAGA?
Well, we all know that the president has an adolescent mind and plays tit for tat at every opportunity. And you may have seen that he was pretty severely attacked by Smollett, who called him an N-word, a punk, and all kinds of things that he tweeted. And I imagine that Trump, who's a tweetologist, saw that. So he had to get his revenge. And of course, as I said on an earlier show, white supremacists and people like Trump, this was an early Christmas gift for them. This makes them feel like, okay, see, MAGA is not bad and it's not really anything wrong. Again, On Culture said that Smollett committed a hoax because racism is a hoax. So they can't wait to find new veils in which to hide their white supremacy and their evil under. And unfortunately, based on the reports, Jussie Smollett delivered to them an angle in which to continue what they do in a veiled way and why they claim it doesn't exist.
Greg, again, what is interesting here is when people begin to extrapolate one incident somehow changing the dynamic of if somebody comes forward. The reality is this. If there is a future incident that is racial or homophobic, you know what's going to happen? They're going to investigate. And then when they investigate and they verify the claims, then they move forward. What you have here is Jussie Smollett, and again, he's innocent until proven guilty, but based upon the evidence thus far, he created this elaborate hoax. This to me, for me, is not this is just going to just change everything in the future, because we have numerous stories where individuals made things up that did not turn out to be true, and it's not like we didn't believe the next person where it happened.
Absolutely. I mean, Donald Trump obviously has no credibility as a racist and as a man who's clearly unhinged. We can set him aside for the moment. But the approach that you've taken since this story broke is the approach that all journalists should take. Those of you out there who are practicing journalists like Roland Martin, pay attention. What happened? You said, I can wait. I'm patient. The story has to come out. This is the line we have to draw between journalists and those who are engaging in this spectacle culture, platform-based, trying to get visibility, social media culture. And that's the bottom line. As it relates to the police, I agree again with Dr. Minago. Shout out to the Chicago police for having a standard that they're trying to uphold, and to the commissioner. Now let's see that same standard applied when we start talking about the death of black and brown people at the hands of law enforcement, and we'll see if they can maintain that kind of momentum. But at the end of the day, you got to wait. You got to be patient. Everybody's just jumping out there because they're trying, again, to be seen and heard in this spectacle culture.
But we also
Eugene Craig organization. One second. Let me bring in Eugene here. Eugene, let's also just be clear, okay? The reality is the number of cameras were there is because we live in a celebrity-driven culture. Yep. So let's just, I understand the superintendent. I had people who were going, I've never seen this happen, where the prosecutors come out and read the statement. We live in a celebrity-driven culture. When you go through how many followers Rihanna, Kim Kardashian, Beyonce, Jay-Z, and others have, versus individuals who are professors or people who are authors, that's what we have here. And so, yes, you're going to see far more coverage of this because we live in a celebrity-driven culture. But the bottom line is simple. This is one dude who has been charged, and at the end of the day, if he chooses to fight it, it's going to play out in court, or, which I think is going to happen, Eugene, I think his folks are going to plea, because at some point, do you want to continue with the hoax as opposed to continue to be embarrassed?
I agree with you. I think he's probably going to end up, his team's going to find some misdemeanor they can plead down to. The guy's a bad liar. I think there are a good cadre of folk that were skeptical of the story from the beginning. Who's out at 15-degree weather, running around with bleach and a noose. It was a horribly put-together hoax. I mean, if you're going to make the whole, you know, this is racist white guys that did this, I'm pretty sure there are enough racist white guy in the Chicago metro that you could have paid double blind to make this thing happen. But that's neither here or there. But I agree 100% with you. We are in a social media age. We are in an age of influence. We're in the age of celebrity. And, you know, I saw the frustration in the police superintendent's press conference of the media that was surrounding this, but it became a story of interest because of the person that was involved. Now, if the police superintendent wants to welcome that same media scrutiny when we have another Laquan McDonald or another Mike Brown or another Trayvon Martin or Freddie Gray, then by all means. And so, you know, by all means. But furthermore, I do like the standard that's being set here when it comes to false police statements. I just hope that same energy is kept across the board going forward.
But it's not. I mean, as Mr. Johnson
Now
said,
let's talk about this case, which again I'm sure others are not really paying attention to, and that is a major crime planned by an avowed white supremacist, a white domestic terrorist who is a lieutenant in the Coast Guard. I'm talking about Christopher Paul Hassan. He is again a Coast Guard lieutenant assigned to headquarters in Washington, D.C. He was arraigned today in federal court on charges of illegally possessing weapons and drugs. But prosecutors said that was the tip of the iceberg. In documents they filed, Hassan called for focused violence, quote, focused violence to establish a white homeland. And he intended to kill civilians on a large scale. He had a spreadsheet with his targets, including cable news hosts and politicians like House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, also Congresswoman Maxine Waters. Now, about half of the folks on the list were people of color. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, you have Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Also, Senators Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. You also had, of course, activist Angela Davis and journalist, pundit Van Jones, and also anchor Don Lemon. Now, here's what's the interesting piece. This is very similar to the previous white supremacist who was arrested, who sent these various packages and did not go off. He too had a list of political leaders and journalists. The reason that one hit close to home, I was one of the people who that man also researched and was on his list to send a bomb to. Now here's the deal. Now if you want to compare the two cases, Greg Carr, here you have an avowed white supremacist, a member of the Coast Guard, one of the 5 branches of the military in this country, who they found a major arsenal. If we have the photo of the guns they discovered, please pull it up. This major arsenal, this guy was plotting to kill multiple people to create a white homeland. If you had to compare Jussie Smollett, Christopher Hassan, not even a comparison. And I'm checking right now, I don't see a tweet from Donald Trump. Greg.
That's because Donald Trump supports this man. Let's be very clear. Joe Scarborough said this morning on his show. He says, I know Donald Trump, and I know that his silence is some way support. This guy is not only in the Coast Guard, he's an ex-Marine. And according to the New York Times today, he studied a 1,500-page manifesto by a Norwegian who talked about how to execute this type of targeted violence. This guy wrote about Charlottesville and saying, I don't believe that protests, this unite the right kind of thing, is very effective. We need to have some targeted violence. But again, this is the bulletproof power of whiteness. Not only is this man alive and in custody, imagine if this had been a black man or a brown man or woman who had threatened and had a list of white politicians. They may have been charged into that apartment and killed immediately as a threat, and no one would have blinked an eye. We had this conversation all day on campus today at Howard, and I reinforced to my students, in the national media, they're saying, this is Maryland, this is Maryland. I said, this man was 10 or 15 minutes away from this campus. He was in Silver Spring, Maryland. Please understand that our lives are forfeit at any given moment. And until the state takes black life, brown life, non-white life seriously, we will continue to see this type of uptick in violence. And this man, an open racist and an open violent veteran of the United States military, suborned in many ways by the rhetoric of the President of the United States, will act with impunity. We're just fortunate he didn't pull the trigger on any of those weapons he was found with.
Cleo, here's what is interesting, Cleo. You have had an increase, a 20-year high, in white supremacist attacks and also anti-Semitism. What's also interesting here is when you compare these two, you're dealing with somebody who was planning to kill multiple people. Smollett, according to the Chicago police, did this to gain attention. This is where you have folks in media, folks in politics who should be saying, wait a minute, if I can look at these two, clearly we are in more danger with this white supremacist. And if this Coast Guard lieutenant was a Muslim, you would have wall-to-wall coverage on every network. America refuses to treat white domestic terrorists the same way they treat Muslims, African Americans, and Latinos.
But I think we need to bring in how the media plays into this. Because one of the things that the officer said in Chicago, and one of the things you both referred to a moment ago, is that he also said that the cameras should be out there looking at the families of people who have been murder victims. But the press was also involved in this whole thing with Jussie Smollett, and also talking about how offensive it was that he would say that somebody white attacked him. That didn't happen. So the press is involved in this. The press is not covering this, and it's the press's fault that they're not covering this. They watch your show, so they know that that's happening. But the press is involved. I want to make that clear, because we think because there's McDonald's commercials and Sears commercials and underwear commercials that they're nice people who are neutral. They're involved in the hiding of white terrorism and the stereotyping of black people, and taking advantage of a Jussie Smollett story to prove their point that we're the problem and not them. So they're not concerned about this dude with all the guns.
Eugene,
yeah.
Eugene, the thing again that jumps out at me is that you've seen Donald Trump hold these rallies and talk about when an illegal immigrant kills an American. Here is an avowed white supremacist who had planned on killing multiple people. You don't have the same reaction. We can go down the list. White man in Kentucky kills 2 black people in a grocery store. Somewhat of a reaction. Kansas, the 3 white domestic terrorists who were going to bomb the mosque. All right, little coverage as well. On this, I probably can pull up 10 to 12 different stories we've done of white domestic terrorists who are planning to kill hundreds of people. And I guarantee you, if one Muslim was trying to do a terrorist attack, it would literally be shut down the airports, the train stations, the rental car agencies, close the border. America does not want to confront the problem with white domestic terrorists, and they don't even want to call them white domestic terrorists, Eugene.
Well, we're forced to deal with a very, very harsh truth. One of the dangers of this particular case, first and foremost, I'm trying to figure out how that guy got that many guns in the state of Maryland. It's virtually impossible to buy a gun these days in Maryland, at least a long arm machine type. That
he's white.
Well, it's
and a veteran.
Try to buy a gun in Maryland as a veteran.
Well, he did.
But the more important thing is this, right? The guy's in Silver Spring. If you understand anything about the DMV and the political culture of the DMV, most of your Supreme Court justices either live in that Silver Spring, Bethesda area, that Montgomery County, if not in Nova. A lot of your senior administration officials live in that area. A lot of your members of Congress that aren't staying in the city live in that area. I mean, it's the threat that this gentleman posed goes well beyond the list that was publicized.
That's right.
I mean, looking from recent news coverage, I mean, the guy is all of 40 minutes away from DAG, Deputy Attorney General. So I mean, it's the,
right.
the threat that he posed is unmeasurable, and the way the media is covering this. I mean, I put more fault on the media than anybody. Newsrooms shape our discussion. We saw that in 2016 when they played the game of, hey, we're literally going to take all 16 of these candidates, prop them up as front runners at one point, and then bring them back down. I mean, the media literally created the Donald Trump presidency with the coverage they gave him.
That's true.
And
But the issue with it, but I'm trying to broaden this beyond just media. And what I'm saying is political leaders, mainstream white media, as well as so many others, do not want to confront or deal with the reality of white domestic terrorism. If you are going, and again, if we want to talk about white domestic terrorism, if you want to talk about Jussie Smollett, if you want to put Jussie Smollett in jail for filing a false police report, do me a favor. Go arrest Carolyn Bryant, a woman who is still alive.
She's got to go to jail.
Who lied to police, lied on the witness stand, and it was white domestic terrorists who killed Emmett Till. But again, in this country, we don't want to call them who they are, and we don't want to own up to it. Folks, hold tight 1 second. We got to go to a break. When we come back, more of Roland Martin Unfiltered back in a moment. Hey fam, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications. Huh? All right, folks, I want to thank Bishop T.D. Jakes for being one of the partners here for Roland Martin Unfiltered. The International Pastors and Leadership Conference is where thousands of entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, and leaders unite from April 25th through 27th, 2019 in Tampa Bay, Florida. Over the span of 3 days, you will glean deep insights on how to catalyze the greatest impact in your enterprise at this highly anticipated leadership conference. And whether you're a CEO or an attorney, get ready to elevate your effort to impact people, processes, workflow, investments, marketing and advertising, communication, and more. The International Pastors and Leadership Conference will equip you to make a positive impact in today's cross-generational environments. Bishop T.D. Jakes, the founder and visionary of the International Pastors and Leadership Conference, will lead this year's leadership conference. Joining him will be a phenomenal team of industry thought leaders, speakers, and entrepreneurs who are called to change the world. You must be there at the Tampa Convention Center, April 25th through 27th. Again, inspired by Bishop T.D. Jakes, a New York Times best-selling book, Soar, Build Your Vision from the Ground Up. The International Pastors and Leadership Conference will expand upon leadership and entrepreneurship strategies, among other themes. Speakers include Bishop T.D. Jakes, Corey Anthony, Pastor Teray Roberts, Pastor Craig Groeschel, Robert Brown, Bishop Dr. Pat McKinstry, Cynthia Marshall, Bishop Walter Thomas, Brett Fisher, Dr. Anita Phillips, Pastor Miles McPherson, Bishop Noel Jones, Reverend Tony Lee, Dr. Antipas Harris, Marquise Boone, and others. How to register? Go online at pastorsandleaders.org, pastorsandleaders.org, or text PL Now. That's P, Pastors, Leaders, L, Now, N-O-W, to 28950. That's 28950. You can also call 1-800-BISHOP-2. That's 1-800-BISHOP-2. And again, we appreciate Bishop T.D. Jakes being a partner and helping to support Roland Martin Unfiltered. All right, folks, let's go to North Carolina, where Republicans, frankly, have been busted for voter fraud, election fraud, in North Carolina's 9th Congressional District. Today, the election board there, the State Board of Election, ordered a new election in that particular race after the Republican candidate, Mark Harris, called today for a new election. Now, he had led by 905 votes, but we also know that we have folks who have been talking about how ballots were manipulated or simply thrown out. How you had this enormous number of absentee ballot requests, but then from Democrats, but then you saw this huge number turned in for Republicans. Talk about crazy. Folks, our guest there, Leslie McCrae McDowell. Dallas working for Harris. Dallas was allegedly illegally collecting absentee ballots and possibly filling them in for the GOP candidate. Now, there have been hearings that have been taking place. They started on Monday, and there was a whole lot of evidence and testimony pointing to fraud, damaging information. Most damaging was the candidate's own son, Harris's own son, who testified that he told his father not to hire Dallas. The younger Harris happens to be a U.S. attorney. He believed that Dallas had broken the law in previous elections and told his father that in phone calls and emails, don't hire him. But the elder Harris had repeatedly denied he had been warned about Dallas. Sounds like somebody's lying. With the son's testimony and the emails between them contradicting that assertion, Harris may have decided to cut his losses and call for a new election, which could include a new primary and general election. Joining us right now is Cynthia Wallace. She's the chair of the Democratic Party in North Carolina's 9th Congressional District. Cynthia, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Roland?
I'm doing great. You got to love all these Republicans talking about voter fraud, and it's Democrats, and we got to have voter ID. And here we have Republicans.
Yes, what we call it is election fraud.
In the 9th
Voter
district.
fraud is when the voters are doing something. Election fraud is when the voters are the victims. And that's exactly what we have here. They are the victims, our voters.
And the thing that, again, was amazing is the constant lying by Harris. And to have his own son bust him in a lie has to be just hilarious to you to see how this thing played out.
It was quite a stunning turn of events on yesterday. His son was even a surprise witness to Harris. Mark Harris, his lawyers didn't know his son was going to testify. And he was blunt. He was straightforward. He gave the facts as they were. He actually brought his own evidence with emails of conversations he had with his father from April of 2017, where he very clearly told his father that Dallas McCrae was a shady character. And his lawyer, his father and mother chose to use him anyway.
Well, and also I think what is interesting about this, because it's amazing how right-wing media just not covering this story at all. And what it also speaks to is when you began to uncover this might not just be the only election. You literally might have had elections, multiple elections, stolen from the people over the last number of years.
Yes, and one of the things that I think is the critical thing to take from this is our rural communities. Our rural communities have been complaining about things like this for years and for decades. And so when you look at things like that, and now that a congressional race was in the mix, that's why this got attention. It's not that it was new. It's just that you finally had a very high-profile race that was caught in the balance of this with 905 votes. So what I'm hoping is that now our rural communities who have been crying out, not only in North Carolina, not only in District 9, will finally be heard. Look at Georgia. Look at all of those small communities. What happened there?
Well, first of all, it has been, folks like you, Democracy North Carolina, NAACP, and others who were on this case, who kept pressing this issue. And this is also what happens when you had Moral Mondays, when you had people who were educated, who were trained to understand what was going on. And I keep telling people, North Carolina is the Alabama of the 21st century. What Republicans have tried to do or have done in that state has been an absolute abomination. And this is where the slate needs to be wiped clean of these fraudulent individuals who all they have a thirst for power and want to deny opportunities to others. Cynthia, your final comment.
Yeah, so I will say that one of the things that we have started dismantling all of the things we've seen happen ever since 2010, when the Republicans took over the majority in North Carolina. They have been trying to take us back 100 years. But we broke the supermajority here in North Carolina in the 2018 election in both the House and the Senate. And so now we are looking to completely flip the House and the Senate back to Democratic hands so that we can go back to some normalcy in North Carolina, so North Carolina can be that beacon that it used to be when I moved here 13 years ago, because it was such a progressive place. And so we know that we will make that happen. We know that we now have a chance, as I've been saying for the last 2 years, to hashtag flip the ninth North Carolina one more time. So we're looking forward to winning this seat and winning more in 2020.
All right, Cynthia, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot. I want to quickly go to my panel. Eugene, it's amazing how Republicans are so quiet about the North Carolina ninth.
As a Republican, this has to be the wildest thing North Carolina's given us since P.D. Pablo. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, this is to have your son, who's a sitting U.S. attorney, tell you not to hire somebody. You still hire him, and then the guy comes in and commits election fraud. The thing is this, anybody who's ever worked in a campaign, at that level, there's very little that the candidate doesn't know top level, which meant that he probably knew that the guy that his operative was actually committing election fraud, which pretty much implicates him as well. And the son kind of implicated him today during the testimony. So I wouldn't be shocked or surprised if, there's a new primary that, he doesn't run in it, and that he, a year from now or two, that he ends up with an indictment. I mean, as a candidate, everything, the buck stops with you and the treasurer.
Cleo, then Greg. Cleo first.
Cleo has nothing new to say about the fact that these Republicans be tripping, and they do what they do. I just always am blown away by the likes of Eugene Craig, who critiques the party that he's glued to. It's like an oxymoron. Sometimes it's mostly a moron.
Look, we all pick
but I
our
don't
gangs.
know. That's all I can say. It's like the Republicans are doing what they do.
Greg Carr.
Well, I'll say very quickly, there are two sitting governors that are a direct result of voter fraud in the last 6 months, one in Florida and one in Georgia, voter suppression, rather.
That's right.
There's a president of the United States that is in the White House as a direct result of fraudulent behavior and voter suppression in places like the county, Milwaukee County in Wisconsin. And there's a leader of the majority in the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell, who, as we speak, is getting ready to use the nuclear option again to ramrod through a few more federal judges. These people have no commitment to anything, as you just said, other than power. What is happening in North Carolina is far from an anomaly. It is, in fact, business as usual for white supremacy in the United States of America.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, folks, got to go to a break and come back. We'll talk about racial discrimination on the Prince George's, Maryland County Police Department. That's next on Roland Martin Unfiltered. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, folks, a class action lawsuit has been filed against the Prince George's County, Maryland Police Department by Black and Latino police officers who say that they face discrimination and retaliation if they complain. The charges also include inappropriate conduct by white police officers. Now, Prince George's County, by the way, is one of the richest black counties in America. And the PG County Police are notorious for harassing African Americans. We're joined now by two of the officers involved in that suit, Thomas Boone, president of the United Black Police Officers Association, and Joe Perez, president of the Hispanic National Law Enforcement Association. Gentlemen, welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Thomas, I want to start with you. For our viewers, explain to them examples of exactly what took place, how Black and Latino officers were targeted?
We were targeted by the punishments that we were given by the police department, the sexist views of the police department. We have our personally owned Me Too movement going on within the Prince George's County Police Department. We have patterns and practices, as well as investigations that are not completed by Internal Affairs Division when it comes to citizens of Prince George's County. So when citizens are voicing a complaint or file a complaint, they're not properly investigated, and we've had people within our own Internal Affairs Bureau who can who actually complained about that and wanted to see more done.
Joe, same thing. What examples have you seen, have heard that have been so egregious that would offend residents?
Well, one of the biggest examples is we've had officers respond to a scene of something, you know, let's say it's a domestic or, you know, a call for service, and immediately after these officers clear the scene, you know, these white officers would send a text message, and one of these text messages that we turned into the Department of Justice read, "We ought to bring back public hangings," you know. And then the sergeant, as the supervisor, responding on that same text message, LOL. You know, those are the type of examples that we see, and we have many more. You know, when the chief held a press conference back in February of 2017, he showed one of these pictures. We have a training dummy that we shoot at, that we tase, and we hit it with the ASP baton in the training academy. They put an afro wig, a black face on this training dummy, and that's what they use for training. One of our officers saw it, was offended, took a picture of it, and we turned it in, and nothing happened. The chief sat on it for months, and it wasn't until, you know, we started emailing it and making some of the local politicians aware of the things that we're seeing that they actually came public.
So the chief of police in PG County, is he black?
No, he's white.
And the reason I ask that, because, and either one of you can answer this, is that people, we talk all the time about the blue line, but the reality is that for black and Latino officers, when you start examining these police departments, we're talking about many of them that are very white, that where you've had this culture of family members who have gone through these police departments. And so in many ways, gentlemen like you are foreign. You are treated as if you are visitors on a police force as a part of being a part of the blue. Your thoughts?
Well, like I've always said, you know, there's shades of blue, and we happen to be the darker shade of blue, you know, and, you know, we can't do nearly the things that the white officers do, you know, and the sad part is that some of us, some officers of color, you know, we fall into that trap. We go out here with these white officers, they do stuff, we co-sign on it, we jump in, but the one that they throw out to the wolves is us. I mean, you've seen it recently when the police chief put that officer out on the traffic stop where he sexually assaulted, allegedly, a female. They put his name out there, they put his picture out there, the chief actually convicted him in the public, whereas we have other officers that are doing worse, that happen to be white, and you don't know who they are, but you see the chief coming on the TV talking about, well, we're looking into this, and if it happened, we're taking it seriously. But they don't convict him or put his name out there like that, like they do to the minorities.
Mr. Boone, final comment from you.
Well, one thing you have to realize, too, as well, is that we've had where black officers were not convicted in the court of law, but they were still terminated. But where white officers were convicted in the court of law, they still have their job. They're still working. They're working within the community. They're actually working in community policing right around our kids. And we try to tell them, hey, look, this guy, he should be terminated before you even terminated someone who wasn't convicted in court. As we always say, and we try to explain to black officers, we're playing bingo and they're playing Negro. And we need to understand that the game is not rigged for us to win.
All right there. Well, first of all, we certainly will be following this class action lawsuit. We thank both of you for being brave enough to file it. It is not always easy to file a lawsuit. As you said, Joe, there are shades of blue, but it's also about ensuring the next generation of officers don't have to deal with the same crap that you guys have had to deal with. Thomas Boone, as well as Joe Perez, we appreciate you joining us at Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Now let's talk about one of our partners, D-Herbs Full Body Cleanse. And I kept my promise. I made to myself that I was going to focus on improving my core. Went through the D-Herbs Full Body Cleanse, lost about 18 pounds. And so now it's all about being a healthier you in 2019. And look, you can decide why you want to do it. For me, it was about losing weight in order to improve my golf game. I want another 10 to 15 yards. I want to be able to also keep the ball in the fairway. So it doesn't matter why you're doing it. It's just a matter for you to actually do it. So for you, it could be losing weight. It could be getting ready for the swim season, the beach season. It does not matter. It's all about you choosing to have a different focus when it comes to your health. And being on the D-Herbs Full Body Cleanse is a way for you to do that. They have 27 different cleanses. I did the 20-day cleanse. I previously had done the 10-day cleanse. They have 27 different ones that you can actually choose from that suits your particular purpose. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to go to dherbs.com, dherbs.com. You can use the promo code Roland. Again, the promo code is Roland. Now, you can also call this number here, which is also important, 1-866-4-DHERBS, 1-866-4-DHERBS, 1-866-4-DHERBS. If you're looking for an opportunity to make yourself feel better, to cleanse yourself, remove lots of the toxicity, you should be able to try the Full Body Cleanse. Don't forget, use the promo code Roland when you check out. All right, folks, going to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk asset forfeiture and how a Supreme Court decision could very well change the scope of those police departments taking millions and billions of dollars from people simply suspected of crimes. Next on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
None of us are responsible for our birth. Our responsibility is the use we make of life. Novelist and newspaper person Joshua Henry Jones.
All right, folks, my hashtag HBCU Giving Day School of the Day is in my home state of Texas, Houston-Tillotson University. Founded in 1875, it is located in the state capital of Texas, Austin, Texas. It is affiliated with the United Methodist Church and the United Church of Christ, and also the United Negro College Fund. Notable graduates include Juanita Craft, Ron Gibbons, Avoma Overton, and Cecil Williams. If you want to support Houston-Tillotson, I want you to go to htu.edu. That's htu.edu. Why do we do this? Because we are about profiling and advancing and supporting HBCUs, and that's why we created hashtag HBCU Giving Day. If there's another HBCU you want to support, go right ahead. And we also want to make sure that the graduates of Houston-Tillotson are also giving back. Folks, last week we told you the story of how police departments make millions of dollars by seizing property of people merely suspected of committing a crime. The most focused area is on drug crimes. And this procedure is called civil asset forfeiture. Affects African Americans at a higher rate than white Americans. It is just another injustice in the criminal justice system. Now, that could be coming to an end because this week, in a unanimous vote, Supreme Court said the Constitution's prohibition on excessive fines applies to state and local governments. That means that local governments will be limited and how they impose fines and seize property. It might end civil asset forfeiture altogether. Now, the case that was decided this week was about a man who owned a $42,000 Range Rover. He bought it with an inheritance that the cops then seized because he was arrested on a minor drug charge. Now, the court said that the seizure was unconstitutional. Just bringing my panel right now. And Greg, I want to start with you. This is what we know. We know that cities, counties across this country, and we've seen the examples from Ferguson and other areas, how they have been imposing massive fines on poor people, keeping them locked up, leading to them to lose their jobs. They might even do a situation where they would small, petty deal that could be easily dismissed or paid for. They would order the person to wear electronic monitoring. They had to pay for it. They're now spending $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. I mean, this is a way that poor people in America have been attacked and used and beaten down upon by cities. This Supreme Court decision is critically important.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are three things. Number one, the decision, of course, and in the case of Tyson Timbs, of course, who you're talking about in Indiana, the seizure prompted this. So yeah, this could be important. We don't know because states still have broad discretion. What this will do is empower judges to look more closely at seizures, these civil forfeitures. But there are two other things involved as well. One, the opinion was written and read from the bench by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So we're glad that Justice Ginsburg is back and hearty, and we hope she lives another 100 years. That's number one. But also, Clarence Thomas wrote separately. In his concurrence, Clarence Thomas said he would have reached the same outcome, but he would have used the privileges and immunities clause of the 14th Amendment instead of due process clause. Why is that important? Because Clarence Thomas does not believe in substantive due process. He writes to say that I don't believe that there's a substantive due process in the 14th Amendment that would extend to made-up rights like privacy. Why is that important? Yes, it was 9-0, but understand that Clarence Thomas has his left eye on a woman's right to choose, on the right to privacy. So he did not agree with the court coming through due process.
Cleo Monago, this is a very interesting issue when we talk about civil asset forfeiture. I previously had an executive from the Koch brothers Foundation. Yeah. And they, as libertarians, are very much against civil asset forfeiture. You have folks like Grover Norquist, conservative, all about no taxes, who doesn't like civil asset forfeiture. And so this is one of those issues where you have these strange bedfellows, liberals, progressives, conservatives, libertarians, folks who disagree on a bunch of other issues, but on this issue who say this is simply foul.
Well, people have extended families. You know, even if it doesn't affect them personally, they have family members who have been and can be affected by this. So I think that's why we have people across the partisans who really support this. Same thing with incarceration, over-incarceration. That issue with people, it has a black face because of racism, but people of all races have to deal with unfair incarceration. So I think that's why sometimes people meet across the aisle for those things. But this is a good thing. It's a very important decision. I hope that it's catchy across the country because I've seen with my own eyes how the cops manipulate, take advantage. Sometimes I won't get into my whole story with the cops. But anyway, this is a really good thing that's occurring, and hopefully it catches on because it's really, really very discriminatory and it's brutal.
Eugene, when you talk about who gives a damn about the poor, many people don't. But what these cities and these towns are doing, where they are targeting the poor, where they're seizing property, slapping them with excessive fines, it is undeniable how despicable these actions are, and they are keeping these folks further burdened in poverty as a result of using the tactics of law enforcement to do so.
Yeah, and the thing is this, civil asset forfeiture is a system-wide tool. It's not, the police may seize it, but, the state's attorney is going to be the one that, some creative counties they'll bring the suit against the actual item and not the person. And many times it's without a charge of the person, and many times it's just on basic suspicion, which is, lower bar than what would be needed to actually search a car, search a vehicle, or search a property. I'm a member of the 2020 Club of America, one of the only black bipartisan criminal justice reform organizations. And civil asset forfeiture has been something that's been on our radar for a very long time. We were able to partner with the Coke industry and Coke Foundation to help put this on their radar. But I'm excited about this ruling. See the 8th Amendment applied. I think this ruling could be applied in a lot of different ways. Just here in the District of Columbia, the way that, camera tickets double every 30 days. That could be held as excessive fining. The way, simple things like toll easy pass violations. A $50 fine on a $1 toll. These are. I've seen so many applications for this ruling within the scope of civil asset forfeiture, but also on the excessive fines.
All right, folks. I appreciate it. Great conversation today. Eugene, Greg Carr, Clem Monago, I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Hey, folks, don't forget, tomorrow I'll be broadcasting live here from Atlanta, where we are holding a School Choice is the Black Choice Town Hall event on the campus of Morehouse College at the Ray Charles Theater. Now, it is free and open to the public. We also have daycare available. Now, it's really going to be last from 5:30 to 8:30. 5:30 to 6 with a fair where a number of the organizations out there, you can come and get more information from them. Then, of course, we'll have the town hall for 2 hours, and then the final 30 minutes we're going to have the fair pick up as well. Why are we doing this? Because I fundamentally believe in every form of education that educates our children. Many of you may not realize Howard University, where Dr. Greg Carr teaches, has a charter school. I believe, Greg, it's the only HBCU in the country that has a charter school. This is important, folks, because this is about the educating of our children. And so for me, whether it's a traditional school, charter school, homeschool, online school, magnet school, I don't care. I want black kids educated, but I want black folks running these schools, controlling the curriculum, controlling who gets hired, and controlling the dollars. And so we're going to have the conversation. We're live streaming it right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. We certainly want you to watch it and to share your thoughts. Last thing, please support Roland Martin Unfiltered. Folks, we are doing these events. We're traveling around the country. Next week, next Friday, I'm going to be in Selma for the commemoration of Bloody Sunday. We're going to be live streaming some of the events from there as well. We've got other events that are coming up. The Pastors and Leaders Conference in Tampa. We want to use this platform, not just for the purpose of this daily show, but also for the point of us being able to live stream events, protest, rallies, things along those lines, because there are so many events happening that impact our people. No one covers, and that's why we're here. So what I want you to do, go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can use our Cash app, you can use PayPal, you can use Square. You can give a one-time donation, you can give monthly. But the whole point is for us to be able to cover these stories, to have a platform that speaks to our issues, and one that is unfiltered and unapologetic. So again, go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com to join our Bring the Funk fan club. All right, folks, that's it for me from Atlanta. I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks so much. Take care. Holla! You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? The blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.